All right, ladies and gentlemen. So, welcome to episode 3. Now, today we're going to talk about popular books within the quitting porn space. And I kind of want to give a more in-depth answer to the question of why do some of these books do not work and why some of these books do work for certain people, right? I had a coaching call yesterday in my community. So I have like a private community. We are like 10 people in there, right? And so one guy asked me like, okay, why is it that books like EasyPeasy, Burgeon, and the Freedom Model are books which do not work? Because he was talking about like from personal experience and seeing other people who tried those things, I'm assuming, and they were still struggling with PMO, right? And so the most obvious answer I could give to this was, I mean, it would be like, okay, well, it's not like we're giving you a pill and, you have to find a way to just essentially, or not find a way. So it's not like you're just going to be cured, if that makes sense, right? It's not like, okay, I have, let's say, for example, an headache. Here's a pill that was going to get rid of your headache or your symptoms or the root of your symptoms, right? It's not, that's not how it works, right? And that's just like the simple answer, but I want to give like the more in-depth answer, right? So let's look at the 3 books first of all, okay? Um, Essentially, we have Easy Peasy, which is a book that was, well, if you know about Alan Carr has a book called How the Easy Way to Stop Smoking, and he done that for like many bad habits like alcohol and things of that nature. And till this day, there's countless people that come up to me. They say, "Oh yeah, I read the Easy Way to Stop Smoking by Alan's Car, and I just left that habit behind." Right? And I've actually read the book. I think like 2 years ago, I believe. Right? I was just interested to see like what was his approach. Right after reading Easy Peasy Method for Quitting Porn. Right? And so Alan's Car had like this very simple approach that worked extremely well when it came to smoking. But then when the same logic was applied to porn, here's the thing, right? As much as I don't agree with Easy Peasy, and I think they have some limiting ideas, and I think that they have certain things that they say that are just overall false and also detrimental, it still works for a lot of people, if that makes sense, right? And so I've seen like time and time again, for example, within like successful by successful I mean like I've seen like people that had a pretty good life, we would say like a pretty good lifestyle. They really improved themselves. They were like traveling, for example, if that was their goal. They had like a somewhat successful business, things of that nature. They were living a much better life than they did before. And I've seen a lot of them say, oh, so are the people that would be struggling with porn or just like asking questions about dealing with porn, essentially, that, oh, just read Easy Peasy, right? And so they kind of like, as I saw, is like they read that book and then they just moved on, essentially, right? And so it shows that there is, now again, like I'm not saying that the book per se is going, I'm going to go into like why and what like actually happens that allows the individual to actually move on regardless of the book, right? But we can say that some people do read the book, and like what happens with most people is they read the book Easy Peasy and then they feel better, and then like for a few weeks they change because their perception changes. Just like just heard of like new concepts they never heard of before, so they're like, wow, this is different, and so they really commit to it, and then maybe they forget the information, or maybe they just naturally you go back to what you always desired in life, maybe whatever. There's different factors in play, and then they go and watch porn again and they're like, oh well, let me read Easy Peasy again, and then they read it again, and then what happens is they go into like this cycle where at one point they end up blaming Easy Peasy, saying Easy Peasy doesn't work, and then they find another book, maybe Burgeon, maybe the Freedom Model, maybe anything else, right? Any other book, any other type of information, or any other process or method or methodology, and then they essentially say, oh look, like the book doesn't work, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm just taking a quick sip of coffee. Here's the thing, these books offer information that might be relevant to you or not. Okay, I think the Freedom Model is probably the best. Is probably the best when it comes to information, because it really goes into the root of like, okay, like this is how you've been brainwashed. let's remove the brainwashing, so you're kind of like left with no excuses, if that makes sense, which would help someone objectively. Now, there's some issues for individuals, not the book per se, right? Of course, there's things that I highly disagree with when it comes to the freedom model. For example, like their stance on morality, saying that, you know, it just depends on the individual. It's like, yeah, but, you know, there's, I believe in objective morality. The stance on masturbation being healthy, things of that nature, right? But here's the thing, okay? The information presented, okay, so I was talking about the issue that people have, I think, with, let's say, for example, the freedom model, right? Let's say that the freedom model is the best of the books to quit porn, even though it's not even tailored to quitting porn. It's still something you can apply to quitting porn, right? If, for example, you're from a third world country and you don't understand a bit more like high level you know, language, meaning like, for example, you hear about new scientific concepts, and you know, English is not your first language, so some of these concepts you don't understand. It's not like you just like reading the book and going over words is going to magically make you just quit, if that makes sense, right? And that's how a lot of people I've seen treat it, right? They're like, let me read this and let me change my mind. But then, like, if you ask them like to explain like a concept that they learned about, they won't be able to even, you know, explain it to you, right? And so you see, like, is it the problem of the book, or is it the problem of the individual, right? And then, you know, if we take Burgeon, for example, right? Burgeon has this theory, which it's like I agree and disagree with, where they say, like, you know, if you don't have anything going on in your life, right? Like, for example, if you don't have like a business or a career, or, you know, some type of like physical exercise and things of that nature, something productive or something you're passionate about, then you're going to just go and, you know, find a way to release, which will be masturbation or porn, right? And I disagree, because I think that, you know, it depends on the individual. I think some individual will make, you know, masturbation not even an option in their mind. Some individuals think that masturbation is something that can be an option. So it's like, you know, it depends on the individual, and I don't think like we are forced to masturbate or watch porn, if that makes sense, right? Even if our life is bad or if our life is good. And so one thing, okay, about all of these, as you can see, is that the information that they present might be helpful or not, right? But then the way that you go about it, okay, the way that you really go about, you know, quitting a behavior, sure, information is going to help 1000%, but information that is tailored to you, to your situation, to your background, your desire, is going to help tenfold, right? And so, for example, if like none of these books existed, okay, and you wanted to quit porn, would you agree to a certain extent that you would have to find a way, right? And finding a way doesn't, you just like, it can be anything, right? And so like, here's how I think about it. I think about it like how I left video games, okay? So let me just take another sip of coffee. So video games, I say like it's pretty similar to how porn is, right? Because a lot of people argue, okay, well, porn is like, you know, so many different beautiful naked women on the screen. It's like you were producing just like a king back then. And on top of that, there's so many videos, so you scroll and there's like this dopamine flooding, whatever, right? People say that, but it's like the same it can be said about video games to a certain extent, because it's like, okay, with video games, you have many different aspects that you know, resemble what humans desire in real life. Like, for example, there's this whole competition thing of like being able to like compete with other men. There's this success and failure, like meaning like you can like achieve things, like you can achieve like a certain rank in a video game. I still remember playing this video game Rainbow Six Siege, and I would achieve like high ranks, and I'll be like, it's like I would tie my identity, my self-worth to a certain extent to that, thinking like, wow, look, I'm at this level, right? I'm so good. And then, you know, there's other things. I mean, look, you literally have a friend group in video games. Like, you have a social life there almost, right? Don't get me started with like, you know, the endless like options of like you can, you know, play for so long, and there's always this novelty, and you know, there's all of these aspects that I would say like resemble real life, if that makes sense, right? And you don't just have like one video game, you have thousands of them, right? And so with video games, okay, when I left video games, I didn't read a book on quitting video games. I didn't like watch a video called How to Quit Video Games. What I did watch and what I did consume was videos that were talking about like why quitting video games would be better for you. Okay? And so I would watch, and that was when I was like maybe 16, 17. And I just like came across this concept of self-improvement, and a popular concept or a popular idea within such movement is that like video games is a distraction, and it is something that would limit your growth and your potential, right? And so they would say things along the lines of, you could play video games, but why not just play real life as if it was a video game, because you can improve yourself and do all of those things you're doing in video games but in real life. And that was ultimately the idea that made me want to leave video games initially, right? It was like, well, yeah, that's true, I can play GTA 5 but in real life technically. Now of course, there's some elements of GTA 5 which you can't do, but I was like, man, why can't I just like go and work as hard as possible on myself? So yeah, maybe like a few years from now, I'll have the apartments I have in GTA, but in real life, because, I know this sounds a bit stupid, but like, it's like I can get like a beautiful apartment just like I have in GTA 5, if that makes sense. I can get those supercars. That was my desire back then, not anymore. But, I was like, man, I can like, build businesses just like I have in GTA 5. I can, travel, whatever. I told my mind, I could literally go to Los Angeles and like, live my life and, have some form of success and things of that nature. I was like, why should I keep on playing video games if I can have pretty much the same things in real life, but then in real life it actually matters and it's much better, right? And so you see, like, that was like my reasoning and my conclusion. And I just watched videos of people saying, oh yeah, if you quit video games, it's going to be better for you. So what happened initially is I didn't just like cold turkey quit video games, okay? Because I played video games ever since I was young. By young, I mean like age of 9, I believe. I don't remember exactly, but I remember like when I was in primary school, okay? Which was around the age of like, it's like 7 or 6 to like 11 years old, right? And at the age of like 9 or so, or let's be like, because I'm not exactly sure, I don't exactly remember, but let's say like around the age of 10, 11, I would be like a chronic, okay, Minecraft player. I would be so good. I would be literally so good and would play so much that my thumbs would hurt because of how much I was playing all day long, okay? I would be so good that I would be at the level of the YouTubers that would play that exact game I was playing in Minecraft, okay? And I was extremely young, okay? Let me take another sip of coffee. I would be more than good. I would play hours a day. Obviously, like I couldn't play at school, and like we didn't have electronics back then, like at a young age, and bringing them in school would be like a big no. It'd be like you'll lose them essentially, okay? Like the school principal will take them away from you. And so I would play so much. And then I got an Xbox at the age of like 12 or 13. And I still remember, okay, because I kind of like, I like took a moment where I played less video games, because in order for me to play video games, which I found fun, I had to go to my friend's house. And well, yeah, I mean, that requires you to just go and like walk and, and do all of those things. And there's like this resistance to go play essentially, right? It's harder to play. And so I bought an Xbox because I was like going to my friend's house. I was like, I want to play with him. I want to do all of those things. I remember having good grades, focusing on my studies, really being bored. So I would like actually do my homework and things of that nature. And then overnight, I got my Xbox. The day I got my Xbox, I had to wake up at 5 a.m. to study, which I hated to do. I had to wake up at 5 a.m. instead of working in the night on my homeworks, because I was like, let me go and play my Xbox. And I did that for weeks, and then years, essentially, right? I was more than addicted. Like, okay, I literally would bring my Xbox to other people's house. Like, for example, if my family, my parents were to go to their friend's house, right? I would bring my Xbox to play. I got told by I even believed that to a certain extent, and I got told by people around me that I was addicted to video games. I still remember like someone, I'm not going to say like, who exactly, but still remember that someone said you would rather play video games than eat food. right? And I was like, true, because I literally would, put off eating food until like I accomplished this game. I would wake up at 4 a.m. because there was a GTA 5 update. Now, I would never wake up at 4 a.m. Usually, I would wake up at like 12, 1 p.m., right? So, uh, you see, right, like the level to which I was playing, right? And I was also bullied and things of that nature, so I would escape to video game when I would come back home, essentially, right? And then, of course, I had the worst grades. I couldn't cope with life. I had zero confidence. I started to lose friends. I had friends in video games, and I was like expressing myself through video games, essentially. I would be able to trash talk and do things of that nature. Now, here's the thing. Coming back to when I was 16, 17, I got told that video games is bad for you. I stopped playing video games, but not overnight. What happened is I started to realize, okay, well, if I quit video games and I put more of my focus on, let's say, reading books, right? Because that's what I loved doing at that time, right? I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then I think I read like, what's the book by Tony Robbins, like Awaken the Giant Within, right? And then I started reading more books, and I was like, wow, this is amazing, man. I'm learning things that no one knows about, right? And then I got a job, right? I was like, let me make money. And then I was exercising, doing all those things. What I said I'm going to do is, I said, okay, now I'm going to play video games once I finish the task for today, once I'm back from work. And so I just reduced the usage of video games I was playing, right? Not necessarily because I thought like I was a dopamine addict per se, not just because like I thought like I still want to play video games and have fun, but let me do it like where I'm still productive throughout the day, because that's becoming more important to me, right? You see like it's just natural, right? It's like, okay, I'm putting more importance on something else, and I'm seeing like it's better for me to pursue that life without video games. So let me try that. And then, I went on, and then what I did is, at one point I was like, you know what? Let me just sell my Xbox. If we were talking about quitting point, would be like, let me just completely remove this thing from my browser, if that's what you do, right? And so I said, you know what? Let me just sell my Xbox. I sold my Xbox. Now look, there was time where I was so bored that I was like, man, I wish I had an Xbox again. Should I go and buy like a PS5 or an Xbox, and so I can like play NBA 2K, maybe do some live streams so I can like be productive whilst I was playing, right? Because I really wanted to be productive, but at the same time I was like, video games is not going to give me anything. And I was like, yeah, I could do that or not. Then what I did is I came back to Minecraft. I started playing with some friends, for a bit, after a few months of like quitting video games essentially. And then I played and I was like, no, this is not worth it. This is boring. I could be doing better things, whatever. It wasn't like shame. It was just like, man, yeah, it's like kind of like, oh, my time was wasted. Let me do something better, right? So you see, all I did was I left video games gradually after playing for multiple years, right? What is it? It was probably a decade, almost a decade of playing video games, right? And I'm saying compulsive, like consistently with intensity, okay? With like multiple hours a day, up to 16 hours a day sometimes. And I just left because, like, in long term, right, it's been years now, I haven't played. I only play if, let's say, I'm at a friend's house and they just want to play like FIFA. And I'm like, okay, why not, right? But other than that, I don't see the point in like loading up on my computer a video game to play by myself or even with other people, because I'm like, man, I get more pleasure from going to the gym, or I get more pleasure from, working on my coaching, for example, things of that nature, right? Or even watching a YouTube video about something productive. And so here's what I'm trying to say, okay? Is that I just made the decision to quit video games based on what I started to desire, or based on what I was desiring, right? What I valued, this, if that makes sense. I went from valuing in my life, and this is the thing, like back then I would value video games because I was like, video games is the only way for me to have some form of success. Because I would be very good at video games. So it would be the only form, be also the only outlet for me to express myself, because I was extremely shy. I was a nice guy at school, things of that nature. So when I kind of like, started to change, like you can say challenge those beliefs, and like I said, you know what, I want to change my life, and I started like having goals in my life and things of that nature. And then I watched a few videos that were saying that like, essentially, if you were to quit video games, it would help with X and X goals, if that makes sense, right? It would help with X and X desires. And it was like, okay, well, let me try to quit video games, right? Because this is based, like, I'm seeing that I could gain what I literally want in life, right? So like, for example, if let's say, for example, someone, okay, is a chronic binge eater, right? So, this is something which I think, I'm not sure if the DSM-5, I need to recheck, but some people are saying that like binge eating is a chronic disorder and things of that nature. I obviously disagree. I think there's like some simple psychological reasons for why people eat more, right? And here's the thing, right? So when it comes to eating, okay, if let's say someone binge eats because he finds comfort in eating and he thinks that eating is the best form of pleasure that he can get in life and things of that nature, right? But, okay, that person in the back of his mind, okay, he wants to become, let's say, a Navy SEAL, right? He wants to become a Navy SEAL. That was his goal ever since he was young. And I'm talking about like a hypothetical scenario of like, let's say, a random individual. He wants to become a Navy SEALs, right? If the guy binge eats and then gains weight and he knows it's bad for him, right? He doesn't exactly know the exact reasons why, but he knows that it's overall bad for him. If I just say to him, oh, stop eating junk food, it's bad for you, you might get cancer, he might not even care about the potential consequences that much. Of course, he's like, I don't want to have cancer, it's going to be bad for me, things of that nature, right? But maybe he's not going to care that much because also in the back of his mind, he might think, well, I might not even get cancer even if I eat, if that makes sense, right? Or for example, it might be like, well, maybe you're going to gain too much weight and then you're not going to be able to focus. Okay, cool. I know it's a random example, but maybe you're going to eat too much and then you're not going to be able to be as healthy. It's like, okay, cool. But it's like, it doesn't matter much to that individual, right? But let's say because that individual has the goal of being Navy SEALs, if you go and you present to him evidence or information that sounds logical or there's proof behind of how eating healthy and not binge eating would help him become the best Navy SEALs as he desires to be, then now it's like, oh, maybe if I were to stop binge eating the way I'm doing, even if I'm doing it for specific reasons which are somewhat important to me, well, the goal of being a Navy SEALs and really becoming the best Navy SEAL is more important to me. So maybe I'm going to cut down a bit on the overeating, right? And let's say the evidence or the proof for that is like, I show him a study of like, the top 10 Navy SEALs at this specific diet. And that's one of the most common factor as to why they succeeded, right? Really random. And I just created this obviously on top of my mind. But you see, like, it's like, oh, yeah, now it makes sense. If I were to do this and that, if I were to really cut down on the binge eating, it would be better for me. I have a strong reason why to cut down on the binge eating now. Do you see what I mean, right? And so if we come back to like EasyPeasy, to the Freedom Model, to Burgeon, and all of these books, it's like, look, they are good. Like, they are very good. Like, of course, if I were to like do a like top 3, I would put the Freedom Model, at first, right? But it's like, look, there's nothing that's going to compare, right? Having something that is personalized to you. By personalized to you, I mean like you go and you think, okay, what is the best for me, if that makes sense, right? What do I actually, want, and why would I change this, right? And doing that based on what you want in life, and not just like based on some ideas that were given to you in a book, if that makes sense. Because if EasyPeasy says, oh, quit porn, it's a drug addiction, it's like, well, okay, some people or like there's people that, for example, that smoke, right? Like smoking cigars is nowadays something that is cool for a lot of people. But for other people, smoking any form of nicotine is like one of the worst things that you can do, right? And so you see, like the people that smoke cigars, they might know that it's somewhat bad for them. Some of them actually believe that it's healthy, right? But that's another topic. But they do it for specific reasons. They're like, well, if I smoke cigars, I might, be perceived as higher status, and I might, have more confidence because I'm doing something that, a cigar costs more money, whatever, right? Like there's specific reasons that they have, okay? And so it's like, if that person wants to quit smoking cigars, then what does he have to do? It's not like, oh, how do I stop smoking cigars? Let me take nicotine patches, right? That's not how they go about it. They just think, this is not good maybe for me anymore. They, let's say for example, the reason why they were doing it is to seem cool, and then they realize, oh, well, smoking cigars is a fake way to seem cool. Everyone does it anyways, so I'm not even cool if I do it because everyone else does it, if that makes sense, right? So you see, like, now it's like, oh, maybe I need to stop smoking cigars because it's not even giving me what I thought it would give me, if that makes sense. And so that's the thing, okay? Never blame a book, even, you know, like, because like there's people that go through like recovery, as they say. I'm obviously against recovery, but there's people that go through recovery, go through like very simple no fap stuff, and still, like, you know, like they maybe take the information and they say, okay, how can I, you know, put this into my life, and then they just move on with their habits. It can happen, right? We're not going to be black and white with everything, okay? Now here's the thing, right? I was thinking about it because another reason why like everything needs to be personalized to you, right? I'm saying like both from like if you're a therapist and like let's say you gotta help someone, then obviously you know that a therapist would personalize the process to someone. You don't just give a blueprint that is like one size fits all, obviously, okay? So for example, I was thinking about it, like imagine you have a kid, okay? And this is why again I'm saying like everything needs to be personalized. Imagine you have a kid and you're like, that kid, let's say he's 20-year-old, so that means that he can live by himself and do all of those things. And you're like, man, this kid is too weak. It's a weird way to talk, but you're like, man, my kid, my son, you know, I feel like he's not a man enough. You know, I feel like, you know, he depends too much on me. I feel like he could, you know, be more productive and do all of those things. And you say, you know what? I'm going to kick him out of the house, and I'm going to like essentially force him to take action, right? Now, let's say like hypothetically there was two sons, okay? Let's say they're twins, okay? And they just have different differences. Like, you know, one has like a well, again, like it depends. Like one has, let's say, a perception that like if they were to be put in such situations where they would have no backup and they would have to, you know, take action, they will essentially break, right? They have like more of like a pessimistic mindset, sorry, okay? And the other guy believes that like, oh, if I were to be put in such a situation, it will be very uncomfortable. It would like it almost break me, but I'll it will probably force me to grow so fast, right? If that makes sense. So you see, just like with these two beliefs, if you were to just like put those two twins, right, out of your house and just like say, you know what, adapt or die, essentially, right? One might just like go to the streets and not, you know, and not do anything just because of the belief that he's going to break even before starting, if that makes sense, even before, you know, being in that situation, right? He believes that. And the other guy thinks, well, I'll have to adapt, so I'll have to find a way, even if it becomes very uncomfortable, and I'll just like grow essentially. And that guy might go on and start becoming the man that his father wanted it to be, right? The father that, the son that you wanted, essentially, where now he mans up, now he knows how to take responsibility, now he knows how to pay bills and take care of himself, right? And do all of those things. So you see, just like one belief could change entirely the outcome of someone, right? And so when we talk about like, you know, books like EasyPeasy, the Freedom Model, whatever, it's like if you have, let's say, for example, just a simple belief of like, let's create one. Like, let's say that you believe that you don't have an attention span, right? And that you have ADHD, essentially, okay? And so you believe that, let's say you go and decide to read like the Freedom Model, which again I think like is a very, very good book for the most part, even though there's things I really disagree with. And you're like, you know what, I'm going to, you know, read that book, right? And so it's the simple belief of I have ADHD might mean that you don't even read the book properly, if that makes sense, right? Again, like I'm not like denying ADHD and saying that you know, like I'm just talking about hypothetical, right? Or let's use a better example to demonstrate this point, right? If you say, for example, right, if your belief is even if I change, right, it's not going to really change my life, if that makes sense. Even if I improve, it's not going to change my life because I believe that life is too hard and I'm never going to succeed, right? You have like this belief that let's say formed from childhood, and so you go about reading a book like the fetal model, and then it's like you read that book and you're like, okay, cool, I understand the information, and like maybe everything makes sense, but then it's like you don't see the point in changing yourself, right? And you're like, because obviously when you change, like there's some level of like, you face the unknown, you become different, and there's some level of like being uncomfortable. And so you see, like, just because of that belief of, even if I change, it doesn't really even matter. It's like, if you were like, what might happen is, you're going to read that book, you understand everything, and then you're about to change, right? And I mean, you can change and completely quit your behavior behind, you realize this, but then it's like, you don't quit because you don't see the point in changing, and then you blame the book for not changing, right? That's the issue I see. Or for example, a very common one is like people read books on how to quit porn, right? Try to like just remove a bad habit from their lives, which is like, that's great. But then they don't have any reasons to do so in the first place. Like they have like, basic reasons, like everyone have, like, for example, yeah, I want to quit porn because it's bad for me. Oh yeah, I want to quit porn because it's ruining my life. But then it's like, sure, but then it's like, why do you want to make your life better? And then it's like, well, because I need to be better, or I need to be more productive in my life. I need to do this. It's like, okay, cool. But then there might be another belief, which is like, and I'm not saying like your beliefs will just like run everything, like literally everything for you, but they do have like a huge influence on you. And that other belief might be, that, look, let's say, like, for example, like you read EasyPeasy, and then you go and you realize, okay, well, let me quit whatever. The problem, okay, is like, for most people, is that they might like go and be like, well, okay, I quit and my life is better, but I don't see why I should like keep on going with this, because let's say I feel the desire to go and have intimacy, and I don't like to feel like that, and I haven't felt like that in a long time, so I'd rather just go to PMO, right? Like there's so many different things, right? And that's why I think like the best solution long term, if you were to just look at like how you left all the bad habits behind, it's like, what do you want in life, and how would leaving that behavior help with that, right? I think it's the most powerful way to just like, change, anything, any habits, right? So for example, when I got clear on like, okay, if I were to go to the gym and really build that dream physique, so I describe my dream physique as like, oh yeah, I'm going to be this amount of weight, and I'm going to be essentially like, I'm gonna have like, muscles there and there, like, I'm gonna have a big back, or like a, broad shoulders, things of that nature, right? And with specific details, and I'm going to be like, and I said like, oh yeah, I'm going to be the guy that is known for that, whatever. This is not what I said word for word, but I'm just, saying overall what I said. I was like, okay, now if I go to the gym, right, then if I like put in like really hard work, right? Well, again, like this is a learned belief that I learned from my coach, but it was like, okay, if you really go to the gym and you really push yourself to the limit, that's when you're going to be able to make more progress. And so I kind of like, started looking at like, okay, this is what I want in terms of fitness. And so if I were to just put in the work, right, this is exactly what I'm going to get. So it's like, I'm going to get a big reward, right? And so it's like, I'm not going to say it's easy per se to go to the gym. It's just like something I look forward to, right? So it's still hard physically. And I'm like in the middle of exercise sometimes being like, man, like, when is this finished, right? But it's like, I enjoy it mentally, if that makes sense, even though physically it's hard. And so that's the thing we need to understand, okay? If I went and said, oh yeah, let me go to the gym because everyone around me is saying that you're going to the gym is important. Why should I go to the gym? I don't understand. Like, to fit in? If fitting in is that important, then maybe, yeah, you're going to be more inclined to go to the gym. But if it's not for me, then why do it, right? And that's the thing, okay? I need you guys to understand that at the end of the day, like, the best of the best is just like, really looking at your situation and fixing your situation, right? Not trying to like copy and paste info. Now, info is very important. Info is extremely important actually. But the best type of information, again, if you want to make it so that it's like you can use it efficiently, would be that you consume information and you search for information that is based on what you need, based on your situation, based on who you are, right? So for example, I remember like when I was trying to learn to work harder on myself, right? Like meaning you can call me almost a workaholic at this point because I love working. But when I was trying to work harder on projects, I would watch videos talking about like why working hard is like the best thing that you can do essentially, and they would give like reasons and saying that pain is actually like the thing that you want to love, and like they gave evidence, they gave like logical reasoning as to why like you should work hard essentially. And so that shifted my perspective, and I was like, oh yeah, these guys are saying that if you work hard, for example, you're going to be able to become the best, for example, in your field. And that's exactly what I wanted. Or if you work hard, for example, then you're going to be able to stand out. And at that time, standing out was a huge thing for me. I was like, man, if I could stand out and finally become the man, right, that is not bullied anymore, then actually is a man and actually like, can stand up for himself. Well, it's like if I'm consuming information saying that like this is going to help me stand out and I really want to stand out, then obviously I'm going to be more inclined to take the action that's going to help me stand out, if that makes sense. And that's how you can create intrinsic motivation to do something as well as extrinsic, right? Meaning both internal and external motivation to do something. And then it can get to the point, especially with the feedback loop, meaning once you see the results and you see that it's actually real, like in the long term, right? And both also the short term, that you just like want to do it even more, and then you almost get hooked, right? This is the thing, right? You can literally change everything, right? But don't go about like, for example, reading a book like EasyPeasy, the Freedom Model, Burgeon, and think that, oh yeah, if I just read this paragraph, if I just read this chapter, if I just read this page, I'm going to become free. Like, guys, really think. Really think, okay? Again, I just said like a simple thing, like, for example, if you come from a country that doesn't speak English and you just learned English a few years ago, and there's some words that you might not understand because they use scientific, vocabulary, then it's like, what do you mean it doesn't work? You don't even understand maybe the words that are presented in the book, right? And so that's the thing, guys, right? Or it might be just like, you if you come across, like, let's say, for example, you read the Freedom Model and they talk about something like the license to misbehave, right? I still remember, because for me, my first language is actually French, but I learned English like, 8 years ago by playing Minecraft, funnily enough. But yeah, when I, read some of these, at first, like, I had a background in like reading, like I was reading for the past 2 to 3 years. I love reading. But when I first read some of these things, I was like, wait. So like, this is a bit like high level for me. But then, I got better and then I understood it, right? And same thing goes for like a lot of books. And so we need to understand that, like, if you're saying that, and this is the thing also I found, but within people that talk about, I read EasyPeasy, for example, but then they say something, right? Like, for example, they say, oh yeah, I watch porn because I'm lonely, or I watch porn because of, they say essentially something which opposes what EasyPeasy says, right? This is something which is opposite to that. And so it's like, have you even read the book in the first place, right? And so I hope this makes sense, guys. Again, think about it. Everything has to be personalized to you. Everything, everyone is different. It's not like one size fits all. Oh yeah, let's just read this book. And it's not me saying that these books don't work. I think that people go and read EasyPeasy and they're like, wow, okay, EasyPeasy says to just leave, and it's easy to quit at the end. At the end of the book, they say just do one last session and then quit. And some people do that and then they just move on. And then it's like, wow, why does it work for some people and why doesn't it work for other people? Is it a question of like, the book itself, or is it a question of, because even if we were to write the best book on earth, would that mean that everyone that would, open the pages of that book and finish the book from A to Z and read every single word of the book would become free? I don't think so, right? I really don't think so. So go and really reflect on this and really think, like, in terms of like what you want, how would quitting that behavior help you?